Good evening, good evening, good evening, family. Welcome to, I believe, the 10th episode of Sidewalk Talk. Welcome, coming to Netflix just soon enough. Stay tuned, family. Sidewalk Talk, right? What is it? So, Sidewalk Talk is an online platform where we look to gain insight, clarify misconceptions, and get a call to action from frontline workers on the front lines of Newark, New Jersey. Now, if you are not familiar with Newark, New Jersey, I don't know, you must be under a rock somewhere because we are doing mighty and revolutionary things in this city here. So, how do we gain insight? So we gain insight to be able to really have nuanced conversations and unpack truths that are often really not even being discussed. Number two, we try to clarify misconceptions about groups of people who are often unheard or misunderstood based on assumptions about their lives. Number three, we try to lift up local organizations and local frontline workers who are really doing the work out here in Newark, New Jersey. And so they know best, right? They know best about what is happening, what needs to be done. And so we get a call to action, family, because talking and meetings and emails, yes, that's all good. However, it is time for some action. So we get a call to action from those who have boots on the ground. So I am your host, Aaliyah Berry. And so for those of you who don't know me, let me take this opportunity to introduce myself. So I'm a licensed community-based social worker. I have 20 years experience working with ages 0 to 60 in a variety of settings. So I've been in daycares and schools as a teacher and shelters, group homes, correctional facilities, after-school programs, summer camps, just a variety of different settings, working with a variety of different people. So I am a community-based social worker, and what that means to me is that honestly, social work is a lifestyle. Right? And so for those of you who do know, this kind of work does not always happen within the four walls of an agency. It doesn't always happen 9 to 5, right? While still adhering to professional boundaries, it's important that we do understand community-based social work is not always within the four walls. So I find myself in baby showers and graduations, unfortunately also at sentencing hearings and funerals, goal setting on the sidewalk, hugs at a red light. So that is the community-based social work that I do. I currently work as a consultant with Seeds and Berries doing strategy work through program development and training in schools, nonprofits, and the government sector. So to keep in touch with me, you can follow me, Aaliyah Berry, on LinkedIn. You can also follow Seeds and Berries on Facebook and Instagram. My website at www.seedsandberries.com. And if you missed this episode live, then you can surely just pop on over, subscribe to Seeds and Berries YouTube channel, and this episode, along with our first 9 episodes, will be there on the YouTube channel. So that is enough about me. Before I even get into the topic and who I have here today, I just want to be able to do some general housekeeping. Right? So I want you to like, tag, and share for impact, right? By you liking and loving and laughing and reacting to our conversation today, it just helps my guests and I know that we're not alone here in a room. If you find that based on the topic and the guests that we have here today, if you know some people that would be interested in joining this conversation, feel free to tag them in the comments. And then a notification will pop up for them, and they'll be able to join us. And then share. We do want this message to go far and wide because we do have a message. My guest and I have an important message that we want to share. And so we do want it to, get into the hands of folks who need it. So definitely like, tag, and share this live stream for impact. And then also comment, right? Comment in the live stream today, because again, that also helps my guests and I not feel alone in this room. You can ask questions, you can put comments, you can contribute to the conversation based on your own experience and add value to the conversation that we're having by commenting in the comments. Okay, so that is my housekeeping for today. So tonight's topic, right? We're moving forward. Tonight's topic, sidewalk talk can't happen, right? A lot of times we're talking about youth, right? And conversations should not be having had about youth without hearing from youth directly, right? And so there are a couple sidewalk talk episodes that we do that I have a guest, a youth guest, that is giving us their perspective. And so tonight we have a youth leader who is paving the way. She is paving the way. She is definitely boots on the ground. She is present. She's consistent. She is kind. She is caring. She's in summer camps and after school programs and healing workshops, healing circles. She's at rallies on the mic. She's at rallies giving people hugs. She's in the hospital in the emergency room cleaning blood off a young person's jacket, right? My guest here tonight is named Joy Strength, who is being considered a hood developmentalist, which you will see by the end of this episode why she is that title. But when I come up with the topic for the month or the day, it is important to then match the guest that is the expert, the true expert on the topic. And my guest here today is definitely an expert on this particular topic. So without any further ado, I'm going to introduce Joy Strength. Hello.
Hello, hey.
Hey, how are you?
I'm finding yourself.
I'm good. So it's very good to see you. And so we're gonna jump right into it, right? So a lot of times Sidewalk Talk audience members come from far and wide. Not everyone is, necessarily from here. And so we want you to be able to introduce yourself and just let the audience know who you are. And yeah.
Okay. My name is Joy Strength. I'm from Newark, New Jersey. I'm one of the youngest victim advocates in the city of Newark. So I do like a lot of advocacy. I go to court sometimes and I advocate for other people. My focus point is really working with the youth because I feel like, the youth is our future. So if we're able to shape the minds of our youth now, in the future, they won't make as many mistakes as we may have made in the past. So I try to, create a better version of me. Let's see. I think I answered that one.
Okay. So yes, definitely the youngest victim advocate in the city. How old are you, Joy? Just so the audience does know.
Okay, so I'm 22 years old.
Okay, all right. So let me ask you this. So some people, when I say youth leader, right, and I did let the audience know some of the places you are and you frequent and you support and things like that. But sometimes the audience doesn't really know what like community youth leader means or like what that really looks like. So if you could, right, walk us through a day in the life of Joy. How does it look, and help us understand?
Okay, so like a day in the life of Joy never looks the same every day. As much as I try to make it look the same, sometimes it just doesn't end up being the same. So like some days it could be really scheduled where I'm just getting up, going to work, having a regular work day, and it's just some days where trauma hits the door, and sometimes it's more than just a 9 to 5 job for me. It's sometimes sitting in the hospital all night with youth after they were shot up or stabbed or whatever, or supporting somebody's family, in their time of need because they might be grieving, or showing up to a crime scene because they need a little extra support because it's a little rowdy over there. So they might need somebody to talk to some of the youth and things like that. So it's never just a regular day in the life, because sometimes it's a rally that it might be. Because a lot of times I find myself going to some of the Brick City Peace Collective rallies North anti-violence rallies and things like that. Because, we're just really trying to take back our blocks and our streets and things like that. So my day in the life is never consistent. It's never the same.
And it
It's
seems
always
like you
something
like that.
different.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's motivating.
How so?
Like, it makes me want to become a better version of me and create better versions of me. And when it is my time to develop it copy and paste another version of joy. Like I know that, like what I'll be looking for, or what kind of tactics I'm raising because, like I have a village around me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so it sounds like also within your day, right? So do you start off the day like in the morning with any type of like grounding or self care, Joy? You know, I'm always concerned about your self care, girl. So how does the day start in a place like that?
No,
Where
I
does
I
self
gotta
care
do better.
happen?
I do pray. I do pray in
Okay.
the morning
That is
before I
self
get up and
care.
take a shower.
Yes.
But I feel like I should definitely pray longer and self care just a tad bit longer in the morning because 5 minutes of self care because I decided to snooze my alarm is not enough.
Okay, we're all working on it. We definitely are all working on it. And prayer, for the record, is definitely self care. So you wake up in the morning, you get ready for the day, and then it's like, um, I know in our previous conversation you had mentioned that you have like an app where you're getting like dispatch calls from the police. Like,
Yeah, so
how do
like I have
you?
this.
Yeah.
So like I'm on the Newark Police Department Spot Shooter app that they give, and then I also get hits from citizens and things like that. And basically, it tells you like all the crime that's happening in your area, the hot spots, where it happened, who may have been involved. If they have that much information, like they don't say the names normally. They just say like 20-year-old male was involved in X, Y, and Z. I don't want to speak nothing negative into the future or into
Right.
existing.
Right.
So I
Right.
won't. So normally I respond off of calls in my neighborhood, and then if not, it all depends on where I'm at the moment because just because you help stop crime or like not really stop or I guess support like the people in need and things like that doesn't mean you ever get off. So as long as you're like available, you should be able to respond.
And then you're also in school, right?
Yes, I currently I go to Rutgers University. I graduate next semester with my BS. So
Okay. Shout out to the yes, the last semester. And your degree is in social work, right?
yes, I'm getting my BSW in social work, and then I plan on landing a job with the division because my ultimate goal in life is I want to reform the foster care system. So in order to reform the foster care system, you have to actually get inside the system deep, not just being a kid that was inside the system, but now being the adult inside the system and trying to make change from the inside out before you start reforming the laws. Because you also have to understand what they're telling you, like why they're doing the things that they do. What's the rules behind it? What's the law behind it? Why do they maneuver this way or that way? So I want to get a little bit deeper into the system. Like I'm not really a part of taking the kids and stuff. I don't want none of that. My job is to try to keep families together as much as possible. But like I just want to make sure I'm creating safe spaces for our youth to go.
Okay. All right. So school is a part of your day. Crime scenes are a part of your day. Prayer is a part of your day. Food, do we eat sometimes? No, right?
I snack more than I
I
eat.
know, I know. That's the
Because
word.
a lot of times a bag of chips could go a long
Yes,
way,
it
like
can. Yes, it
a
can.
long way for me.
Yes,
Because
no.
sometimes I'm just running. So I'm like, if I
Exactly.
could grab something quick to eat, I'm eating and going.
Yes. So I'm going to circle back because I want to circle back to self care, right? Because going from one assignment to the next, and then doing like 8 assignments in one day, right? Emotionally, as we get deeper into this conversation, I want to go there, okay? But first, with the audience, right? So now that you guys have a good, right, exactly. Amina Bay just said, does she sleep? Yeah, I don't think much,
I
right?
probably sleep like 2 hours a day, maybe three.
Exactly.
But unless I'm on vacation, because I vacation monthly as self care.
Yes,
Literally,
yes.
like even if it's just 2 days, I make sure I take myself somewhere. Even if it's just Philly, anywhere outside the city that I live in. So I just turn off my phone and I kind of X out everybody and everything. So I'm actually able to focus and get some sleep and ground and regroup and things.
Good, good. And so, like I said, I want to go deeper because then you have the long term self care, and then we have like the self care in between assignments, right, Joy? Because you are a community based social, I'm going to call you a social worker, right? Especially, and then you get them letters, girl. But you are a community based social worker. And so, when you're doing so many assignments in one day, like what kind of self-care and pause do you take in between assignments? But like I said, we'll get to that later. For the audience, because some people know you, right, and some people don't know you, right? So now that you guys have a sense of like what she does and how she does it and where her heart is, now if you could tell us your backstory about how you even came into the role of community leadership. Like, how did you bump into this, fall into this? Somebody put you on? How did you become a community leader, and when?
So I became a community leader. It wasn't my intentions. I want to be honest. Like, with everybody, when I got into this community work, it wasn't intentional for me to really stay in community work. I always just wanted to be somebody in the background who's just pushing somebody. Like the social work part has always been in me. But like, I never seen myself actually being on the front line or being a first responder and things like that. So I actually got into this work by actually reaching out to Alchemy Fest when I was in school, our freshman semester again. I used to be in one of the programs at the hub when I was younger because my behavior was on this thing to speak about. I came a long way, like, I was being sent to the hub to, like, develop and learn a little bit better, like, and mellow out and things like that because I was wild out here in these streets. Like, I probably would have caught a bullet in these streets have I not changed a lot of my actions and things like that and grown up a little bit. But I really got into this community work for like my voice out loud at the hub. So like one day I was talking to Alteris and I was feeling like one of my stories basically like, everything that I've gone through, like, in the foster care system and how they was putting out trash bags and how they was sending me to places like the houses and places that I was like being sexually assaulted at or being not cared for and things like that. And one day in the MCOL, Alteris looked at me and I looked at Alteris and he was like, "Oh, this is your time to speak to help somebody else." And I was like, nah, I ain't comfortable with all that stuff. I don't have time for somebody to feel sorry for me. I ain't nobody's victim. Like, that was my mindset because, to be a survivor afterwards was, oh, you have to be a victim. You got to be helped by somebody and things like that. So I actually started like my position being an ambassador for My Thoughts Out Loud, and then I turned into like a community outreach leader. And I started running like summer camps and things, and I couldn't understand it because I would have a regular summer camp, and I have like 50 kids in my summer camp, when I'm only supposed to have 15 in my summer camp. So I, like, trying to find a way and like stretch money and budgets and things. And then these kids were telling me like they wasn't eating at home. They was going to do all this stuff at home, and I was just like, oh well, I guess this is my code. Because like, I found myself sacrificing and giving my paychecks away, like, let's go get you some groceries, let's go make sure you're straight, you eat today, how is school, let's do this, let's do that. So like then I became like a street kind of mentor supporter because like I started seeing like more kids regularly. I could hang outside of the school and like all the kids it's just like, hey Joy, what are we doing today? Are we able to help me with this? Can we go to volcano? Could we do some of the most random stuff ever? Could you just sit and talk to me or talk to my mom because my mom doesn't understand what's going on or that I'm struggling in school and I'm scared to go inside the house and like tell her what's going on. So I started like I guess being more involved. And then I started talking to Al Tariq. It was like, how can I help more? What can I do more? And he just like, he said, well, if you like to fight, you like to argue, you're always trying to argue with somebody. So why don't you go and take your self and get certified as a victim advocate? So I said, a victim advocate, what's that? He was like, well, you have to go to school for it and things like that. And I ended up going to school and I ended up getting certified within like 3 months. And I went from like community outreach to victim advocate. And that's how I ended up kind of here because now I started branching off a little bit, building my own brand. The more I learned in my social work classes, like, if I wanted to work on a macro or micro setting, like, that kind of helped me determine determine which route I was going to go because I do a lot of programs in the city and things like that for all the ages. Um, now we're here.
Now we're here. So I want to lift up. I mean, that's a really powerful like journey of transformation, and for a community members that are watching it, right? It's about lifting up how you became a leader, because what it sounds like is one, somebody had to point out your own potential to you, right? Because then he was like, well, how about this? And how about you just come to this show, MTOL, right? And you're like, oh, yeah, oh, okay, okay. And then you get to summer camp with 50 kids, and now you're starting to learn your own potential, right? And now kids and the community is responding to you in a way that's teaching you your own potential. Then, as what usually happens with us, we fall in love with that work, right? And then he encourages you to get some credentials, which like the victim advocate certification
Yeah.
program, right? And then you're like, oh, what's that? Because a lot of young people, would you agree that like sometimes young people don't even know the names of leadership pathways? Do you think that's the case?
I think that's true because I had to know what a victim advocate was. Like I've been to court and things before, and I've actually had a victim advocate, and I didn't know what like their position was or what the job was or what the point of it was. I just thought they were just another lawyer because they would just talk people out of like their charges being as high, or they'll get them dropped, period, or like they give that understanding aspect. So like I had to grow to understand and study it to know what like the position actually is.
Because I find, so for those who may be watching that don't know, so I work with violent and or gang affiliate offenders, and there's this new word that's not really new but is new to them, which is credible messenger, right? And so some of them, like if I bring up that lane and the fact that it's paid, right? Sometimes, most of the time, that it's being funded right now. A lot of them don't know the word or pathway that lane is called credible messenger. So I think it is a good point just to bring up that sometimes, we have young leaders all around us, and they may not see their own potential. So we have to like show them and pull it out of them, right? Then support it, then push and pull them, then get them credentialed, right? So,
All the
okay,
time.
exactly. So then once you made your shift, right? And so now Joy is an officially, she's a victim advocate, she's officially in leadership and doing community work. How did your peers respond to your shift? And what about now? Like what does your peer circle look like? What were their reactions to your shift?
So my entire friend group shifted. I probably have like three friends from my past that I grew up with and things like that, but everybody else is just like, oh well, I don't like what you're doing. You are op, yada yada yada. I'm like, I'm a op. I said I don't work with the police. I don't mess with 12. I used to always try to be down. Like I don't mess with 12. I'm not a big fan of the police. I've never been a call to police type. No matter what the situation is, if I can solve it myself and solve myself, the fastest way we can solve it without the police is how I do it. But I lost a lot of friends. Like a lot of people was like, "Oh, you're kind of like acting different and things now that you're in a different position." And I had to explain to them. I'm like, I'm more like in leadership, so I can't post the fact that we all go outside, and you guys want to do inappropriate stuff like drink and pass out and things. I can't post all of that stuff because that's a piece of my image. I have people that look up to me. I have little kids that find my page every day, inboxing me, "Hey, Joy, what you doing?" And I'm just like, no, we're not friends. But it's just like losing, outgrowing a lot of people. Like I've outgrown like my entire circle, but now I'm like I rebuilt my circle with like a lot more stronger people, like a lot more strong women in my circle. Like my sis on here, I know I see her carving and Audrey, like she's like one of my rocks for me because she's so supportive of me. Like I can call her anytime, tell her anything that I need, even if it's not a need, even if I just need the bit, she's always there. She's like, and it's not like I have to take her it's just like she has this intuition where she might just know something's wrong with me, and she might feel it in the universe. And she's like, "Hey, Joy, what's up? How you doing? What you doing? Where you at? Where you want to go? Let's go. Let's sit down. Let's keep. Let's self-care a little bit." So, like, it was fun to realize that the people in my community that I had to put into my circle to actually create the leader that I am. Because you don't create a leader by yourself. It's not created overnight. It's created all based off of other leaders and off of other examples in the community that actually do the work.
And so it sounds like there was peers that kind of fell away, but it also sounds like, I think a lot of community leaders can relate to this, is like once you do make your shift, there are certain people that aren't going to go with you into that new place, right? But then to your point, bringing up Audrey, right, is like the really dope, caring people that really are aligned with your new mission, right? Which she definitely is 100%. And so then, like, new people that really are aligned with your mission and aligned with your brand, your image, which you were basically saying, like, I can't go do that other negative stuff. And then also talk to like fifth graders in the inbox, right? Like, you
But I
can't,
can't say don't do drugs and I'm out here popping mollies with you guys.
right?
That doesn't make sense.
No, no. And there is no quicker way to be a not credible messenger than to be a hypocrite at that point, right? Because then you're straddling the line and you're doing this at night, but this during the day, this Monday through Friday, but this over the weekend. Like, we have to stay true to ourselves once that shift happens. But then to your point, other community leaders that are positive and do this just get drawn to you, right? And then I can tell just you smiling with those type of loving people that are in your life at this point that support you. You know what I mean? So that's dope. Because not everybody can come with you, Joy. Facts.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely not. But listening to our podcasts, like, and things like that, because I used to go to restaurants and things in the past and things like that. So seeing his growth and listening to his family, that's has always changed my position and my perspective of leadership, because he always says, "Family, forget about me. Forget about me. I love you." So, like, it takes the focus off of me and it puts it on to other people that we may be working with. A lot of people, you never know somebody, the last time people were, "I love you. I appreciate you. I support you." Or just to give somebody a hug, you never know. So, like, I always try to be that person that I needed or wanted to be. And, like, I try to listen and support my mentors and all the quotes and things that I see. So,
And then people mentoring you to be able to do this work better while also being what you needed. Exactly what you said. And that's a perfect way to put it. So then over these years, right? Because what age would you consider like I was officially a youth leader at what age? Like how many years, how
I
much
was
skin you got in the game?
I want to say I choose in a youth leader at like 17 because I've
Okay.
always had people follow me, and that's when I kind of started to turn my new leaf. But I started to really turn my new leaf after I got arrested. It seemed that nobody was coming to get me. So that's, I was like, okay, well, perhaps kind of change for the better. All this fight, I need to go sit down with counsel. I need to sit here, talk it out, and because this is not the way.
Right, right. Right. And to be honest, a lot of times it leaders, natural born leaders like you, Joy, you were a leader at 6. Right? Like, yeah, you're laughing because I know that's right. That kids were following you around the play yard at 5, 6, 7 years old. And then you're saying, well, then I started noticing at 17. And then some crazy stuff happened that then pushed me into like maybe turning in a different direction. So over these years, right, what have you learned over the years about this work and about being a youth leader? And like, what have you changed in your approach based on these lessons over the years?
The way I speak to people.
Okay, what do you mean?
so serious. Like, in order to get through to somebody, you have to actually, okay, let me rephrase that. You get more bees and honey than you do with visitors. So if you're speaking to people all kinds of way, all kinds of nasty and things like that, your response is going to be negative. You're going to not get the response that you want. Telling people to shut up, not trying to listen to them, actively, things like that is only going to shut down. And I had to learn that over again. Or just even being open, passionate and things like that. Because you're open and passionate, sometimes you lose your expectations. Just like, based off of your approach, based off of your tone or how you said it. Because a lot of times I'm learning it's not about what you said, it's about how you said it. So you could have said the right thing or whatever, but you may have said it wrong. How the message is perceived and things like that. And people are like looking at you like, well, I don't respect her. I don't want nothing to do with her. Why am I going to listen to what she says if she just spoke to me like I was some animal on the street or I was some type of bug? But most times, well, not dogs. So, and everybody just comes to play. So I think that was like my biggest lesson over the years, like, was trying to curb curiosity and things like that. And, it's still a work in progress. It's not like, it's something that happens overnight and things like that, but it's like, learning that self control and things like that. That was like one of my biggest lessons.
No, the way the communication is definitely a work in progress. Even for all the way grown. We could be at 60 years old, girl, and we still are going to be learning how to effectively communicate, especially because, like you said, it depends on who you're talking to and in what kind of situation and what you're trying to get done.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's really important that you have learned that as a lesson over the years. Have you ever found, like, in regards to like what role your healing plays in this work, have you learned that over the years? Like, that healing is important when it comes to being a healer.
Yes. So I haven't learned it completely. It's still a learning process for me because, like, every day you heal, every day you grow in your journey and things like that. So it's not like healing never happens. It's not like it's just rules external. It's like, it's internal too. So like, when you work in the field that I work in, a lot of times you're triggered by a lot of the things that happen around you. So now it's trying to motivate you and fix yourself that you're able to still be able to help somebody else heal because hurt people, and heal people, heal people. So basically, like, if you're working towards that doing and you're working towards that positive energy to be able to help somebody else find like, your place. But it took me years to realize that, like, a lot of the stuff that I went through wasn't for me, but it was somebody else, so I could teach somebody else or help somebody else from. Because you never know when somebody's on the ledge or, like, at the end of their journey in their head. So this took a minute because at first, like, I thought I was gonna walk around thinking myself, like, oh, well, I went through all of this stuff, so I don't have to do this. I'm not gonna listen to you. I'm not gonna support you. I don't have to follow these directions and things like that. But eventually, like, I had to realize, like, oh, well, I'm hurting, so I'm hurting other people, and, like, on my way trying to act like you. So, like, it was like sitting down, going to counseling, things like that. It's been like, learning where my place was and learning that my story isn't my story, but it's somebody else's story.
So then that leads me to kind of another question, like a follow up question, which is, have you ever found within your work that while you are working on your healing, that you are triggered sometimes by the work?
All
And
the time, especially when it deals with children.
right. And so do you have advice for other healers that are on this in the audience about that?
I think you should just know your limits, and self-caring is like very, very, very important. So like every time like I get like a really super, super heavy case and things like that, I literally have to go sit in the bathroom for like an hour to make a bath, wind down, put my phone down, put some music on, just feel like, I'm a human, take care of myself because like, read a book or write down, like, some notes or something. Because a lot of times it becomes overwhelming, especially if you're going case back to case back to case because like, as a lot of people I see has been. It's been live the last couple days. So like, we've been receiving calls and cases back to back to back to back. So like, it's just sitting down, winding down, knowing what your limits and what enough is. If you're going, you find yourself and guiding yourself to pieces together.
And I think that that is great advice, because sometimes as community-based folks and healers, like we do want to just support, not save, right? We're not saving anybody, but we want to support. Just one more, right? And then to your point, like if you don't know your limits and it is back to back to back to back, exactly. Audrey just said mental health breaks are necessary, especially when being triggered by the work, right? Because then, to your point, you then we can really be laid out by the work, and then as unhealed healers, we end up bleeding on the people.
Yup.
What is an example, like not necessarily you, but just in general, not you, but how, or have you ever known somebody who was supposed to even protect or support you that you could tell was, and not in specifically, but in general, what does bleeding on the people look like?
So I mean, growing up, I've had a counselor, and I can't. I kind of feel like I canceled my counselor because one day, like, she was having a really crappy day. Walked in the office for a session or whatever. This was when I was a lot younger though. So like, and most of this stuff was like court mandated, and I used to try to do everything and get out of actually talking about what I was supposed to talk about and having sessions and things like that. But one day she was having a really, really rough day and things, and I was like, what's wrong? And she just kind of poured out everything. I can't really go into details,
Yeah,
because,
yeah, no.
actually friends and like actually friends on social media and things like that. But like, she was pouring out like X, Y, and Z that's going on with her kids, and this is what was going on in her life, and something, and school was overwhelming her, and the job was overwhelming, like that. And I was just like, ooh, like I don't know how to help you, but I'm just sitting here and listening to you and give you a hug and hopefully you feel better. But that's like a perfect example of how like, our roles was reversed, how she kind of was bleeding on me because, she needed a mental health day. Well, she needed a mental health day. Like, she was explaining she can't afford to take that day off. So,
Absolutely. And so, I'm like, just kind of resting in this place right here in this conversation because I don't think we talk about it enough as a healing community. Like those healers of us, boots on the ground, frontline workers, it is very important and it is coming to the forefront, right? There are like events that are happening and like frontline workers' mental health are beginning to be discussed, but we want to push that conversation even further. Like that needs to be on the forefront of the conversation because we can't heal others unless we are healed. And Audrey had said like sometimes triggers reveal where your healing needs to take place. So look at that as a learning opportunity, and don't, to your point earlier, push through and not know your limits, and then you're laid out and sick and triggered and not able to help anyone at that point. So I think that's an important part of this conversation. So we're going to shift a little bit, right? We're going to shift a little bit just to talk about, because it's important for us to hear how you view leadership, how you came into leadership, your own healing process, how you looked at your own potential. So now, Joy is in the street. True indeed. She's at crime scene. She's on the sidewalk. Little kids is in her DM, right? But let's also not get it twisted, family. Joy is at strategy tables. She's at macro level strategy tables. And so we're not going to talk about any table specifically, right? But just speaking in general, Joy, when you show up at a strategy planning table, what do you see your purpose as? Let's start there. What is your purpose at those
um,
tables?
so when I sit at a strategy table, my initial purpose is to come as a voice for the youth. So like, I'm not just here to sit at the table and listen and just agree. I'm here to challenge opinions and kind of put my youth opinion in. Because, I'm the voice for us. I represent us a lot of times because it's not that many of us at the table. A lot of times I'm sitting at a table for a 40, 50-year-old, and I'm like the only 20-year-old sitting at the table. So like, a lot of times I'm faced with like a lot of adversity, and sometimes, people might not want to hear what I have to say, which is okay. Everybody's entitled to, but that doesn't make my feet strong. Underneath it, that just shows me I need to try a different way or a different tactic.
Mhm.
But like a lot of times I walk up to these tables, I'm like highly respected and things like that because people respect my views. And then sometimes, other times, it's just like I'm looked at like, oh, she's young. She doesn't really know what she's speaking about. She has to think with things. She doesn't have the experience to things. And sometimes, like, you have to shut somebody up because you know. So,
And so when you said sometimes I gotta go about it a different way, that goes back to your honey and vinegar, right?
yes.
She said yes. um, right, because so would you say that like most of these strategy tables, you are the only youth at the table?
Yes. Um, 90% of the time, I'm the youngest person sitting at the table. I'm like the only youth face. Everybody else is probably like middle age, things like that. And like, they're trying to speak on behalf of us, but they don't know what's enough to actually speak properly and advocate for us. So like, not that I know everything that youth need or youth want and things like that, but I feel like, since that is the position that I am and I am youth, I know enough.
And so, um, if like why, and maybe a lot of the audience may know this already, but we need to say it out loud, right? Why is it so important, and not just important but critical, that youth are at tables of strategy, especially conversations that are happening about youth? Why is it so critical that youth should be at the table, a part of the conversation?
Because we're the ones that's dying left and right, like and we're trying to make a plan to stop us from like killing each other or hurting each other and things like that. But we don't even know like what the center of the issue is. We all assume that it might be a beef or something like that, when it might be something a little deeper, like it might be something like, oh, they might not be eating at home, or they might not have a safe place to sleep at, or they have been in survival mode. So now it's like us sitting at the table to understand that, which is important for how we make our treatment plans for our youth or our revision for our city, so we can try to keep our crime rates and stuff down.
Because
So that's how
yeah,
I feel like my apologies.
no, go ahead.
I lost my thought.
Oh, sorry, sorry. But I was just gonna say that sometimes because conversations are being had without y'all and decisions are being made, and sometimes the people at the table don't understand what's happening on the ground. You spoke a little bit about barriers, which is you said sometimes people don't want to listen, right? So like one of the questions that we have is like, what kind of barriers do you find at these tables and how do you overcome? You already mentioned one, and that you like just get it done a different way, communicate it a different way. But what are assumptions being made about you at these tables in
That
general?
I'm young, that I'm ignorant. I never know what I may be speaking about. Um, I'm too I'm too forward. I'm too blunt a lot of times. Let's see, what's some more? Something I don't have anything good to offer. I'm not knowledgeable enough on the subject or um my degree that I'm gonna get next month, not next month, next semester. That's supposed to validate me and the work that I do, and it doesn't, because like I've probably done more work outside on the ground than I've actually done in school reading these books and things like that. So like a lot of times just trying to get somebody to actually listen.
And so all those assumptions are being made, and someone just put in the chat what I was gonna say is like, if some of us are watching, and we run those tables, right? Or we're sitting at those tables as well. So audience members who are at strategy tables, right? All those assumptions that you just said, oh, that you're young, blunt, forward, don't know what you're talking about, all this. What do those tables and the adults at those tables need to do to make sure you feel valued at that table? Tell us.
I feel like we both should do the same thing, and we should both actively listen to what each other have to say. Instead of us being so busy listening to respond, you need to listen to understand. Because if you listen to understand, you get both perspectives, where they're coming from, and you're able to put both things into play. Whether it's just how one was like, one idea, or if it's just actually doing it their way, or like, having that explanation and things like that. Because a lot of times, if you explain stuff to us, that actually makes us more.
That if you explain stuff to us, what?
If you explain things to us as you will actually listen more. Instead of like, instead of saying like, oh, we don't have to explain anything to you, we don't owe you an explanation, you don't deserve an explanation, this decision is final, like, things like that. Not saying that like, you mandated to give us an explanation, but it'll be like just to like, give us what's going on in our heads and why like, these decisions were made instead of like, the decisions that we may actually that will actually benefit us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so those strategy tables that you're describing are ones that you may not feel valued at. There's no other youth there with you. It's just you. And you're pushing your way through the conversation, right? Now, on the flip side, describe a strategy table that you feel appreciated and you're valued.
So then there's like positive strategy tables where they're just like, hey, can you go out to this school and can you collect this data or this information or find out what you could have in this area and things like that, so we can support you guys to see how much better like we can make, because the biggest goal is to help us become better as a group. So like it's ones that actually listen and it's important and they're like, what do you actually need to be successful? How can we help? How can we be there? How can we support you? So it's like, it's definitely two different kinds of tables.
Yes, I'm clear. I'm clear. And by the way, some of us who aren't youth leaders, we can relate. We can relate in different ways because honestly, sometimes, gender matters at a table, right? Sometimes class matters at a table. Sometimes, race or ethnicity matters at a table. And so I can totally hear what you're saying. And I think it's important to say out loud, especially on Sidewalk Talk, where we tell truths that aren't being told, right? And have real talk about it, because if anything, as people who are running these strategy tables, if you are experiencing that, like, we need to check our table. We need to check our table. And on many Sidewalk Talks, we've talked about ego, right? And so sometimes and not to say you're not an adult, like, I don't want to say you're not an adult, but like non-youth people, because you are an adult, right? But like non-youth people sometimes feel we know best and we know what we're doing, and this program is just so fabulous for youth, and we don't want to hear, no, actually, that's totally missing the mark. Coming from the mouth of a youth. What?
It was just like, no, that's not the vibe. That's not what we're looking for. That's
What do you mean? Right. Right. And like, what do you mean that's not the vibe? What do you mean by vibe? See, you should know what she means when she says that's not the vibe. Right?
So
So,
like,
yeah.
when we say vibes and things like that, vibes mean like the environment, the way things feel, because like energy is very, 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 very important. So basically, it's based off of your energy. So how you come, how you present your opportunity, or how you present your issue.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so sometimes you even explaining certain things that people don't understand. But I just hear you talking about bridging the gap. bridging the gap, and we have talked about that a lot on Sidewalk Talk, like bridging the gap between youth and non-youth, right? Adults and youth, and bridging the gap of understanding, right? Like that's super, super, super important. And you are at the table as a key person that's looking to bridge the gap. So we need to make sure that we respect your place at that table. So we're almost done. I would say shifting a little bit away from the strategy tables, let's take this opportunity to ask Joy, as a youth leader, right? What would you say? We talk a lot about on Sidewalk Talk misconceptions. We want to clarify misconceptions, especially about misunderstood and unheard individuals where people are making a lot of assumptions about them and about their lives, right? So I like to clarify misconceptions a lot on Sidewalk Talk. So, Miss Youth Leader Extraordinaire, right? What are misconceptions about youth? Not necessarily leaders, because I think we kind of already learned that. Like, what are we, making assumptions about youth leaders? But what would you say is a misconception about youth that you want to clarify for us?
So for starters, I would have start with our young black men. Our young black men, they are not thugs. They are not gangsters just because they might sag their pants a little bit or they might use a little bit language that everybody used at one point in their life. That does not make them a thug. That does not make them a gangster. That still makes them the young king that they are, or the prince, or however you want to refer to them in a respectful manner. But that is still somebody's son. Same thing with daughters. The way that your daughter dresses does not mean that, like, they're putting themselves out there that they are hoes, that they're kings, or all these other types of things. Our females are not that. They're young queens and things. Just because they may be a little loud and a little rowdy, but you can't get through something that we don't listen. Not all of us are ignorant. Not all of the youth are disrespectful. Sometimes it's just we have to meet them where they're at so we can understand where they're coming from, what their perspective may be, because you really don't know what happened last night to them. You don't know if they ate last night. You don't know if you had the fight or the survival mode last night. So, like, we always have to take that into account sometimes when we deal with their attitude. Because even with regular adults, like, a lot of stuff trickles down into, like, our everyday life and our attitudes and things like that. So, like, it's just taking a moment to check in with our youth and things like that. And we don't do that. So, like, instead we just say, oh, they're disrespectful, they're loud, they're ignorant, they have no common sense, or the generation before them is just baby facing. But, like, they're doing the best that they can do, or they're doing what they only can do what they learn. So how about we redirect them?
That's
Yes.
absolutely, yeah. And you're making assumptions of, people making assumptions about youth. Just like you said, you have to talk to them and seek to understand them to then even be able to know who they really are and not make the assumptions that oftentimes we make from afar, way from afar, right? So thank you, Joy. I'm team that all all day. So the last question that I do have for you, right? We do clarify misconceptions here on Sidewalk Talk. We have nuanced conversations talking about real talk, truths that aren't being told, and a call to action. Call to action, because we can talk all day, and talking about these kinds of things in this way is important, but we want a call to action from folks who have boots on the ground, like yourself, right? So, what would you say is your message to adults working with youth leaders? Not even just youth, but those of us who are working with young people and identifying them as leaders, pushing them into leadership, supporting them in leadership. What is your message to us first? We'll start there.
So my message is to actively listen. And, like, I think I feel like I keep saying it, but, like, actually listen to understand instead of listening to respond, and that's on both halves. Like, it's not just for the adults, it's for the youth as well. But, like, really heavy for the adults because, like, a lot of times we look at it like, oh, I'm an adult, so I'm right. And still I say it's like the Bible, it's both, it's correct. So, like, it's listening now to understand and knowing that things change and that this is, like, it's not all the same things that it used to be 10, 20 years ago. things change every day. So
So to stay in tune with what is even going on nowadays and to actually actively listen to those who we are trying to put into, not put into leadership, but to support, in leadership. And then we are definitely not going to leave this episode without your message to your peers. Your message to your peers to empower them to be leaders. What do you want to tell them?
I have a call to action.
Oh, yes. This is all call to action. Go ahead.
Because I know you told me to do one, and I am
No,
realizing.
it's. Well, see, the thing is, actively listen is a call to action, too. So you're good. Keep going. Keep
My
going.
call to action would be though to like find five that you're not biologically related to, and just sit down, take them out,
Find
even if it's
five.
ice cream or something like that. Take them out and just sit down and get to learn them, find out what's going on in their everyday life. Maybe not all at once, but one by one. My message to my peers would hmm, never be never be afraid to be like, to shine and be in your life and grow to find out who you are, because you're gonna lose friends and things. Because that just means those people were not your real friends and they weren't in your real circle. It's okay to be different. Dare to be different. You wanna be different. You don't wanna be the same. You don't wanna be a follower. You wanna be the leader of stuff you don't crowd. Showing people the way. So don't be ashamed of that and face that. It's not funny. It's not whack like you used to think it was. It's not whack to be smart. It's not whack to be a nerd. It's not whack to be a geek. As long as, like, you're happy, do what makes you happy. Feel safe.
That's a good call to action. I mean, that's a good message to them and call to action, to your peers. Um, and we do need you, right, to turnkey, right, to then like raise up those behind you and those people, young people that you are mentoring, even the ones that you are supporting on crime scenes, right, the ones that you are supporting in the hospital emergency room, like for you to then, you are the role model for them and they are watching you and seeing that that lane is possible, right? So I thank you, Joy, for coming on tonight. I really, really do thank you. And I just want to, even more than thank you, but I want to acknowledge your courage, right? Because exactly that last piece about what you're telling your peers, like it's okay to be different. And, sometimes people don't want to step out into a role that would have them lose friends or not be popular or, that requires courage. And you did it, Joy, right? Like you did it. You turned your pain into purpose. You were receptive when an Tariq Best walked into your life. You could have just been like, nah, bro, I don't know what you're talking about. Deuces, right? Like you could have though,
I'm
Joy.
laughing because I was like that the first couple of times too.
The first couple times, maybe.
I'm like, you gotta go, man. Like you in the way, man.
Well, guess what? So was Miss Berry. Like, not all of us was jumping to leadership. Like, leadership is scary. Leadership is not like the most exciting thing ever when it first gets presented to us. So you might have said get out of here, man, at first, but ultimately you were receptive and you turned your pain into purpose. And so you are a powerful healer in this space, and this village would not be the same without you. This village would not be the same without you. You are really a giant out here doing, like, holding your lane down, holding it down. And so I'm just so proud of you. This was an awesome opportunity to, kind of talk about this stuff. And so I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. I appreciate you for having me on your show.
You are very welcome. It's the best of the best on here, and I honor and respect your work, Joy. We value you. And so Sidewalk Talk can't go forth without Joy being a guest. So have a wonderful night, and we'll talk soon.
Likewise, thank you.
All right. Wow, family. That was a great, great, great conversation and episode with the one and only Joy Strength, Hood Developmentalist, youth leader in Newark, New Jersey. That was awesome. And having just real talk, nuanced conversations, that's what we're trying to have on this platform. So, summary of a call to action, right? Call to action. First, right? Support Joy's work. Well, how can I support her work, right? She already said the call to action was get 5 young people and mentor, that she said, that are not biologically related to you, and mentor 5 young people in your community. If you're not sure, right, how to go about that, she recommends the Hub Arts Trauma and Recovery Center at 139 Prince Street in Newark, New Jersey. That is a mentoring organization that birthed her in leadership. And so they do mentoring over there as well, and a whole bunch of other dope things that they do over there for youth and families. And so definitely go check them out if you're trying to get connected to mentoring. You can also, if you're from out of state, right, you can't really stop by, or honestly, you might not even have the time or capacity to mentor. Well, guess what? Donating and financial support to organizations and those of us who are out here doing the work, that is a lane. And so Sidewalk Talk always talks about find your lane, do your part, find your lane, right? And so even finances is a lane. So donate to an organization like the Hub. Their Cash App is that Hub Life. Today they went paintballing with young people, and so they're doing great work, and they are definitely worthy of, the financial support, because, that's a need as well. So quickly, she said, mentor young people. She said, seek to understand. She said, actively listen. She said, value young people at our strategy tables, not just have them sitting there as a checkmark box. Oh, we have youth at the table. No. How are we interacting with youth at the table? How are we valuing their voice? How do they feel while sitting at our strategy tables? I don't know about you, but that broke my heart, hearing her describe how sometimes she feels at certain strategy tables. That is not okay, right? So we need to make sure that they feel valued at the strategy table. And then way even before in her journey of transformation, leadership was identified in her. And then and then somebody who cared, a caring adult like Al Tariq Best, pulled that thing out of her and challenged her, and then got her credentialed. And so these are the things we need to be doing with our young people. So that is the call to action. And then our next episode is really going to then talk about this call to action a little bit deeper, right? So again, my name is Aaliyah Berry. I was your host on tonight with Seeds and Berries. You can follow Seeds and Berries on Facebook, on Instagram, on my website, seedsandberries.com. This episode, if you missed it live, is going to be on YouTube tomorrow on the Seeds and Berries channel. You can also see either 9 or 10 episodes. I think this is the 10th episode of Sidewalk Talk. So we've had a variety of different dynamic guests on this platform. Go check that out. And again, I work as a consultant doing strategy work through program development and training in schools, nonprofits, and the government sector. So like, tag, and share this live stream. And next time, we're going to go a little bit deeper, right? So we're going to learn how to identify, empower, and build youth leaders from a programmatic standpoint, right? So we heard from Joy today. We heard from her perspective. Now my guest, who is a guru Yoda in youth development and leadership work, he is going to be with us a week from today on May 29 at 8 p.m. And he's going to be talking about how do we see youth leaders in our world? How do we identify that potential in them? How do we empower them to be leaders? How do we build them up? How do we build programs around youth leadership? And so that is going to be a pretty powerful conversation 1 week from today. And that is it. I thank you for your support on today, supporting Joy and Sidewalk Talk. Again, my name is Aaliyah Berry. Have a good night.